Once a drug addict, always a drug addict? That's the question that tons of people always ask, and I would like to think no. Sure, the urge will always be there for those people, and I'm fortunate enough to not be in that position myself, to have those cravings, to have those dark necessities of the mind where you go to over and over again, having these cravings, wanting to shoot up, wanting to snort a line, whatever it may be. Welcome back to Beyond AR TV. Today we have a very special episode of 7 on Sunday, one that I've been working on for a while, just because there was a lot more research than usual involved in the making of this episode. It's not just some of my favorites about something. Obviously, these are not things to be favorited. These are heartbreaking tales, but things that also have a good ending, at least as of now. Today, we are talking about 7 musicians that have kicked nasty drug addictions, just problems that overtook their life, how it ruined their family, but they rose from the ashes, hit rock bottom, and built themselves back up. Obviously, it's not just a one-person team. You really can't do it on your own. You have to have the support of your family and friends, and that's probably the reason we have the majority of the people on this list still with us today. So with that being said, be sure to leave a like on the video today. Let me know if you would like to see me do more serious episodes like this in the future, and what you think of this one in the comments down below. Let's go ahead and start off the countdown. Oh, and 2 other things real quick. 1, sources are linked in the description. 2, these are not ranked in any particular order because I don't rank drug addictions. This is, like I said, not a favorites video or anything like that. So here we go. First up, we have Anthony Kiedis, one of my favorite frontmen in the world of rock music. The Red Hot Chili Peppers exploded in the 1980s, and so did Kiedis' drug addiction. He had flare-ups with heroin and cocaine, and he saw one of his bandmates, guitarist, I hope I'm saying this right, Hillel Slovak, who died in 1988. He saw death around him and destruction from drugs, and that was finally the wake-up call for him. For a while, Kiedis managed to stay sober. He ended up writing songs about it. Under the Bridge talked about where he got his drugs a lot of the time, and he was sober during that time period in his life. Unfortunately, he did have a relapse in 1994, early 1995. He started using again, which caused big complications within the band. They started recording their album One Hot Minute, and tensions were high. Things weren't going well. That caused delays with the album. They finally put it out, but the band struggled for the next little while, half of a decade, as Kiedis continued to use. It wasn't until the early 2000s that he really started to get a grip on what he wanted to do with his life, kick this addiction, get rid of the heroin usage, and actually move on with his life. I really recommend reading his book, Scar Tissue. It details a lot of this. I haven't quite made it all the way through yet, but it is a really captivating read, especially if you're interested in the Red Hot Chili Peppers at all. David Bowie, the legend himself, passed away in early 2016. We lost him in January, several other huge music figures this year, but fortunately it wasn't due to drugs. It was due to liver cancer, but David Bowie did have a pretty intense cocaine addiction in the 1970s. You can clearly see in interviews and even in live performances that was fueling his energy on stage, his persona, the Ziggy Stardust man, the star that was up on stage having to perform every night. He felt this immense pressure coming down on him. He wanted to be entertaining, he wanted to be enthusiastic, and he wanted to be there for the people that came to see him. And so as a result of that, his addiction to cocaine got out of control. You can see him going on talk shows, visibly shaking, uncomfortable, not knowing exactly what to do with his hands. You can tell that he's riddled up with some sort of drugs in his system, and over the next decade, really from the early 70s nearly until the end of the 70s, he had an intense drug problem. It wasn't until the late 70s, around 1978, 1979, that his assistant Coco got him the help that he needed. He ended up moving to Berlin and getting some help there. It just really gave him a new perspective on life, and he also got custody of his son, which inspired him to be a much better person and to consistently stop using. We're going to talk about Bowie more with another person later on our list, but we'll save that thought for now. Seattle-based rapper Macklemore is one that struggled with addictions early on, whether it be alcohol or marijuana, moving into other stuff, and they say it wasn't a gateway drug as he raps on Drug Dealer, but it actually was for him. Some people don't know how to stop themselves, and Macklemore, as he admits in his MTVU interview, which I will have linked down below, that's one of my sources there, he admits that basically he was one of those people that just didn't know when to say no, and it was like a challenge to himself. It wasn't even peer pressure for him. He was one of those people who kept pushing himself. He went 12 shots deep the first time he ever drank. He got into his parents' liquor cabinet at home alone on a school day and just started consuming alcohol. From there, he started skipping class in the early high school years, smoking weed, whether it be by himself or else with friends, and then he started using Oxycontin, other prescription drugs, and it really overtook his life. It wasn't until his parents, more specifically his dad, sat him down and said, "This is going to destroy your life, son. You're never going to be able to achieve your musical goals if you keep doing this." For years, he had been back and forth, hot and cold, playing with music, taking it seriously, and then relapsing into using prescription drugs and other various substances as well. He finally got clean, entered rehab, completed it, and he has had a few troubles over the years, but for the most part, he's managed to stay clean. He talks about drugs often in his music, as seen on tracks like Other Side, which talks about heroin, and on Kevin on his most recent album. Drug Dealer dropped in 2016 as well, talking about prescription drugs, and it was a song that really hit home for me because I had a grandmother that struggled with that. In fact, she lost her life. I never got to meet her because of that, and it was because she was prescribed so many different things and her medications were out of control, and obviously he saw that in his own life. He wanted to get a prescription and he found out it was so easy to do that, to forge one or else to get one just from a doctor, because the corporations wanted to keep feeding them. They need the money to stay alive, so their greed drives the addiction of others, and it's a problem that not many people are willing to talk about in America. So kudos to Macklemore and kudos to him for becoming sober. Let's take a look at Albert Hammond Jr. next. He's the Strokes guitarist. He has his own solo work as well. He just dropped Momentary Masters not too long ago at all, I think about a year at this point. And he struggled with a lot of addictions throughout the early to mid-2000s whenever the Strokes were really rising to fame. It started off with kind of an Oxycontin and cocaine addiction. He took that coke and started running with it, and by 25, 26, and the rest of his 20s, which he just completely ruined, he was using heroin. He saw his life just kind of passing before his eyes. He was spending thousands of dollars every single week just straight to drugs, going down the drain. He couldn't even focus on life without being high. He had to get his next fix, and he realized that he was at rock bottom. Before their album Angles came out, they started recording that. It took them a long time to get it out, and a lot of that had to do with his addictions that he was dealing with, these personal demons that he was battling off, and he finally got there. Obviously, since 2009, Albert Hammond Jr. has been sober. Congratulations to him. He speaks out on it kind of often. He talks in interviews about it, and he's willing to share his feelings, hoping that it will help others achieve soberness as well. One of the worst addictions on my entire list is the next one here, Chester Bennington of Linkin Park fame. Linkin Park rose to fame around 2000 with their album Hybrid Theory, but the majority of Chester's problems came before that. His mom really was worried about him. He had wasted away to around 100 pounds, claiming he looked like a patient from Auschwitz. That is terrifying to see your son looking like that, I'm sure. Chester Bennington had a problem with a lot of things. He was dropping acid tons of times every single day, smoking crack, using meth, and then using opioids to come down from that. Just balancing out drugs with more drugs. He was in a haze. He was almost dead at one point, and then finally something snapped in his mind. The people around him finally got him the help that he needed. He wasn't taking care of himself at all. He wasn't eating, but he finally got clean, got sober, and went on to achieve one of the biggest superstar statuses in the world of rock music throughout the 2000s. Still to this day, Bennington is clean and sober, and I'm very proud of him for that. He spends his time focusing on fitness, fashion, and obviously touring with his band Linkin Park. And for a while, he was touring with the huge band from the 1990s, Stone Temple Pilots, as the vocalist there. He keeps himself and his time consumed. He keeps his thoughts on his passions, and that distracts him from the drugs. I hope that you are able to achieve soberness for the rest of your life, Mr. Bennington. Kudos to you. Many people talk about My Chemical Romance's lead singer Gerard Way's addictions, but some seem to overlook the fact that his own brother Mikey Way, who played in the band My Chemical Romance, had a lot of personal struggles of his own. For decades, he was self-medicating, really prescribing himself essentially all of this alcohol, various drugs. Not exactly sure which ones. He hasn't been too specific about it whenever he talks about it in statements, like with Electric Century, his new band. He had a posting on his website where he really just came clean to everyone, talking about all the struggles that he had, and he finally admits, hey, I have a problem. I have burned so many bridges. People have had falling outs with me over drugs, over alcohol, over me not being able to keep my shit together unless I am all drugged up, high out of my mind, or else drunk. He finally realized that that was not a healthy lifestyle or the way to live your life at all. And in 2014, he got sober. He posted on the band Electric Century's website in a statement saying in November 25th, right around Thanksgiving 2014, saying that, hey, this is what happened. I'm getting the help that I need. I've been sober now since the beginning of 2014, and since then he has not relapsed. I'm so very proud to see that he's taking these strides, and hopefully it will inspire more people. Now, I told you guys that David Bowie was going to be popping up again, and that's because we have Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails next on the final entry on our list today. Trent Reznor rose to fame in the early 90s with Nine Inch Nails, an industrial rock act. Obviously, the Downward Spiral was a smash album, a fantastic record, but one that really saw a lot of pivotal moments in his career, a lot of decisions, and a lot of depression, a lot of crippling anxiety. And you're wondering, where does David Bowie come into this picture? Well, Reznor had always admired Bowie's work, and Bowie knew of Reznor as well, and they ended up talking. They were friends for a while before they even met in person, and Bowie wanted to tour with Reznor. That was absolutely mind-blowing. I wish I could have been there for those shows, but they actually performed Hurt together on stage. Reznor's song about self-harm, probably drugs as well. There was a lot of different theories on what the song could all involve, but obviously we saw what happened with Reznor in his downward spiral of his own. Performing Hurt live on stage with David Bowie really set something off in him because he was at a very low time in his life. He hadn't quite hit rock bottom, but he was starting to use cocaine heavily. He became addicted to that and drinking as well, started mixing other drugs as well, even at one point accidentally overdosing on China White heroin because he thought it was cocaine. That sent him to the hospital, still didn't end it, but he thought back to David Bowie and what Bowie had told him. Bowie didn't look down on him or condemn him by any means. In fact, he just reached out a hand and gave advice, basically saying, this isn't what you have to be. You don't have to do this. And he kept those thoughts with him and managed to achieve a sober lifestyle starting in 2001 whenever he finally checked himself into rehab. Reznor called in to Rolling Stone and relayed a lot of this information that I'm telling you guys today right after Bowie passed this year. And it's just crazy to see how many people who went through addictions, including someone like David Bowie, and how they can help other people. What did you guys think of today's episode of 7 on Sunday? Did you know that the musicians on my list had drug problems? You weren't aware of how prevalent they were in their lives, or maybe you had no idea at all. Sound off in the comment section down below, and if you want to see more episodes of 7 on Sunday, there's a full playlist in the description. Thanks for hitting the like button today. It helps me know that you enjoy videos like this, and subscribe to the channel because friends don't let friends go unsubscribed. You can see a recent video that I did on the channel by clicking right here, or you can click right over here to see the most recent episode of 7 on Sunday that I did. Social media linked in the description. I'll see you guys very soon on Beyond AR TV.